A forgotten artifact lies in pieces on a planet far from Earth. Few know it exists except those who took it back and those whose ancestors created it. 4 young people are thrown into a race against emissaries of the gods to find his pieces. Mistrust, greed, and magic are tangled in an endless web. What will the fate be of the universe once it is found and reassembled? Get Scepter of the Gods, The Rod of Truth now on Amazon, and get wrapped up in the saga that will not let you go.
Welcome to the Motivational Devotional, where we merge spirituality and motivation for a balanced approach in pursuing a lifelong dream with relentless intent while in sync with the universe. Take what you can from this podcast to transform your life into the one you want to create. Good morning. I'm Mark the Writer, and I want to thank you for joining me today as we continue our series, 50 Ways to Love Your Soul. I hope you've been able to follow along with this series and are finding it helpful in getting your new year going in the direction of your lifelong goals as well as in deepening your spirituality. If you know anyone who could use some encouragement in setting goals or spiritual development, then please share this podcast or the blog version from motivational-devotional.com. Today is perhaps one of the most important out of all 50 of these podcasts on loving your soul. I have saved what I think are the 3 most important topics for the last, and today being Wednesday, that means that we wrap up this series on Friday. Today, we love no. Tomorrow, we love yes. And Friday, the title is Allow Yourself to be Loved and Know You Deserve It. For now, let's get on with what it means to love no. Maybe you have always been able to tell people no, and you have no problem with whether they get mad at you, say they are disappointed in you, or at work tell you that it would have looked really good on your resume had you said yes. Maybe you are just that self-differentiated. If so, this podcast might just shore up some of how you see things. The rest of us, though, may have struggled with this a little throughout our lives. For myself, I have struggled a lot of times with the results of not saying no when I should have. It's not just peer pressure when you're a teenager, it's also just that things sound like a lot of fun or like a really good idea. You know that saying, seemed like a good idea at the time? That was my motto for several years. I honestly can't remember one occasion when it actually was a good idea at the time. So, I think the greatest challenge in being able to say no is the ability to have good judgment so that you know when to say no and when to say yes. You can't say no every time because then you would miss out on a lot of great opportunities. Good judgment can be a scarce commodity, can't it? In the first grade, I climbed up on the jungle gym on the school playground. Ours was a blacktop playground. The jungle gym had a pole down the middle of it, so you climb up the bars, shift over to the pole, and then slide down. Cool. Easy peasy. Then this one brilliant first grader told me how fun it is to get on the pole at the same time as someone on the other side and slide down together. Well, seemed like a good idea at the time to my little first grade mind, and so I shifted over and put my hands around the pole, but because he was already on the pole, I couldn't get a grip, and I fell off backward. Did I mention that the jungle gym was made of steel pipes that were joined together to form squares and cubes about 18 inches apart? To me, it was huge, but it was probably about 7 feet tall. When I fell backward, the back of my head chimed every one of those bars on the way down, I think about 4 of them, and then I smacked into the asphalt flat on my back. I had the wind knocked out of me, and I was unconscious. I woke up in the little Windsor, Missouri hospital. I don't even think they had an emergency room at the time, with the town only having about 2,700 people in it. I didn't have any hair on this little spot on the back of my head, and my mother took me home for a couple of days. I have a lot of stories like that, such as the kid who talked me into walking up the slide with my arms wrapped around myself like a hug, and then falling forward to slide down on my belly. That was 3 stitches in my right eye, and the scar is still there. I broadsided a car on my bicycle, and yes, the car was doing 30 miles per hour, and I was lucky to hit it instead of the other way around. At 16, another kid at church camp talked me into sneaking out on the lake with the camp sailboat during afternoon quiet time which was a nap for the counselors, and we broke a cable holding the mast and had to be pulled back to shore by a nice person with a motorboat. As an adult, you would think it would get better, but I've let fellow employees talk me into helping them with projects only to have them take all the credit, and I've let people close to me talk me into taking on projects that they said would be great for me, only to have them flop, and then that person told me all the things I did wrong with it. Never mind that I was not really interested and was only trying to please them by doing it, which was the real reason it flopped. Those things weren't part of my lifelong dream. I could go on, but you get the idea, and maybe you have some brilliant tales of your own to add to the list. The last thing I said is a critical thing in being able to say no and loving that word, no. You don't have to have a crystal ball for evaluating something as to whether it's a good idea so you can decide whether to say yes or no. A million things can be a great idea, but not a great idea for you. This is maybe the number one reason why it is so important to be specific and keep in mind your lifelong dream. Your lifelong dream is your measuring stick. Of course, in the first grade, I would have had no clue about a lifelong dream, but now, of course I do. I hope you do too, because any opportunity that comes up needs to be measured against your lifelong dream. Ask yourself whether it helps you achieve it, and if not, will help you become a better person. Does it offer an educational opportunity, or is it just going to be a whole lot of fun? If it's only going to be fun, consider whether there are any consequences that work against your lifelong dream. If it offers an educational opportunity, and by that I don't just mean school or training, I mean, will it teach you something valuable, and if so, will that help you grow into the person who can better achieve your lifelong dream? Do you see the point? If you use your lifelong dream as the measuring stick, it makes saying yes or no a whole lot easier. If you say no and then get some flack about it, you can then easily say that it just won't help you get where you want to be. Anybody would have a hard time arguing against that. Oh, the last thing about this is that saying no isn't just about things that others try to get you to do. Sometimes those spectacular ideas that come up in your own mind that inspire you to do something need to also be evaluated the same way, especially if that spectacular idea involves a college major. Tomorrow, though, we will talk about loving yes, and sometimes that means loving when we said yes but should have said no, but somehow we learned something incredibly valuable that we might not have learned otherwise. Just know that when you do say no, love that you did, and know that all of creation is conspiring in your favor. Trust that the universe always has your back. Apple founder Steve Jobs said, "It's only by saying no that you can concentrate on the things that are really important."
Thank you for taking the time to listen today. Please help keep this podcast going by following the Motivational Devotional Facebook page, following @Threefold Way Radio on Twitter, and sharing the written format of today's message from motivational-devotional.com on your social media. I am deeply grateful for your support, and thank you for letting Motivational Devotional be part of your journey. Peace out. See you tomorrow.
Motivational Devotional is a production of Threefold Way Radio, LLC.